Please welcome to the stage Dr. Sara Budinis.
An update on the current status of direct air capture in the context of reaching net zero emissions across the global energy system by mid-century. My name is Dr. Sara Budinis. I am an energy analyst at the International Energy Agency in Paris, and it's my pleasure today to join you, although remotely. In 2021, the IEA published its landmark report, Net Zero by 2050, a roadmap for the global energy sector. Since then, the energy sector has seen major shifts. Based on the latest data on technologies, markets, and policies, the updated Net Zero Emissions by 2050, or NZE scenario, represents a pathway, not the only one, for the energy sector to achieve net zero CO2 emissions by 2050 and play its part as the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in achieving the 1.5-degree goal. Reaching net zero emissions in 2050 means that some positive gross emissions coming from sectors which are currently difficult to decarbonize, such as heavy industries, for instance, or aviation, will be fully balanced by CO2 removals thanks to technologies such as bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, or BECCS, and direct air capture with storage, or DACs. The challenge ahead of us is massive, and all sectors need to decarbonize, some faster and some slower. Notably, the power generation sector becomes carbon negative just after 2040, while industry and transport sectors remain carbon positive even in 2050, as previously mentioned. In this context, CCUS, carbon capture utilization and storage, is an important technology because it can reduce or eliminate emissions in areas where other options are limited, for example, in the production of cement or synthetic kerosene, and in the removal of CO2 from the atmosphere. However, so far the history of CCUS has largely been one of unmet expectations. Progress has been slow and deployment relatively flat for years. However, since 2018, momentum on CCUS has increased on the back of stronger policies and improved market conditions. Today, over 45 countries have CCUS projects in development. If all announced capture projects are built, around 400 million tons of CO2 could be captured every year globally by 2030, which is great because that is more than 8 times current capacity. On the other hand, even if all announced projects proceed, they would provide around a third of the annual CO2 capture of the 1 gigaton a year needed by 2030 in the NZE scenario. Among the various CCUS applications, however, direct air capture is the closest to be on track. In fact, if all announced DAC projects were to advance, even those only at the concept stage today, DAC deployment would reach the level required in 2030 under the NZE scenario, or around 75 million tons of CO2 a year. DAC technologies capture CO2 directly from the atmosphere for CO2 use as well as CO2 storage. Meaning removal. And it's important to highlight that that can be a fossil-free source of CO2 for direct use, such as in the food and beverage industry, as well as indirect use as a feedstock, for instance, for building materials, plastics, and synthetic fuels. At least 27 DAC facilities have been commissioned so far in Europe, North America, the Middle East, and Japan. However, all of these plants are small scale with only a few commercial agreements in place to sell or store the captured CO2, while the remaining plants are operated for testing and demonstration purposes. 6 DAC projects are currently under construction, with the largest 2 expected to come online in 2024 in Iceland and in 2025 in the United States. Plans for at least 130 DAC facilities are now at various stages of development. However, only 16 facilities are now in advanced development, and the large majority of DAC plans in the pipeline, so under development, are linked to a single announcement. So any change to that will affect the likelihood to meet the DAC NZD target for the year 2030. So I think that by now it is clear that the net zero emissions by 2050 scenario requires the immediate and accelerated scale-up of DAC. This will require increased public and private support to reduce costs, improve technologies, and build the market for DAC technologies. The International Energy Agency has identified 6 near-term priorities for DAC deployment aligned with net zero goals. The first one is to demonstrate DAC at scale as a priority. Targeted policies and programs are needed for near-term demonstration and deployment. Governments should ensure that planned projects are able to progress to operation and provide essential learnings for DAC technologies and supply chains. The second priority is foster innovation across the DAC value chain. This is particularly important because innovation will be critical to reducing manufacturing and operational costs, as well as the energy needs for DAC plants, supporting the availability of low-emission energy sources for high-temperature heat, and finally developing and reducing the cost of CO2 use applications, including synthetic aviation fuels. The third priority is to identify and develop CO2 storage, so the potential for DAC to remove CO2 from the atmosphere in large quantities rests on the development of suitable geological CO2 storage. And although the storage potential is vast, the time to develop these resources can be as long as 10 years and could act as a brake on the scale-up of DAC in certain regions. It's also important to develop internationally agreed approaches to DAC certification and accounting. Robust, transparent, and standardized international certification and accounting methodologies for DAC are needed to facilitate its recognition in carbon markets and IPCC greenhouse gas inventory reporting. The fifth priority is to assess the role of DAC and other carbon dioxide removal approaches in net zero strategies. Improved understanding and communication of the anticipated role of DAC and other CDR approaches in net zero strategies will help identify the technology, policy, and market needs within countries and regions. And last but not least, it's very important to build international cooperation for accelerated deployment. So collaboration through international organizations and initiatives such as the International Energy Agency, Clean Energy Ministerial, Mission Innovation, and the Technology Collaboration Program on Greenhouse Gas R&D can play an important role in promoting knowledge sharing, reducing duplication in research efforts, and also harmonizing approaches to life cycle assessment and accounting methodologies for DAC technologies. I thank you for your attention and wish you a very fruitful continuation of this event.